All right, so you know how your phone just loves to surprise you with those update notifications?
At the worst possible
대전도점에
times,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then you're stuck trying to decide if you should hit download or just like live in the past for another week. Well, we're diving into the latest iOS updates, specifically iOS 18.0.1, and what we're hearing about 18.1.
And trust me, it's more interesting than it sounds.
Way more interesting. What's really stood out to you about these updates?
The thing that's kind of throwing people off is how Apple is rolling out these new features. Remember all the cool stuff they showed off when iOS 18 first came out?
Oh, yeah, I was so pumped for that emoji playground.
Oh, turns out we might be waiting a while for some of those big-ticket items.
Seriously. They're calling it a phased approach, but it definitely has people talking.
It's a fascinating strategy, though. It shows they're thinking long-term. Like, remember how excited everyone was about tap-to-provision for Apple Pay in the Dominican Republic?
Yeah, okay, maybe not everyone, but it's a big deal for some people.
Yeah. Exactly. It's about expanding their reach strategically.
Right.
And this focus on specific regions and functionalities, it's a recurring theme with these updates. Take, for example, the ability to change your primary email address in settings.
Oh my gosh, yes. Finally. I've been waiting for that forever.
Right. It seems like a small thing, but it's incredibly useful for anyone who juggles multiple email accounts. No more accidentally replying to your boss with your Star Wars fan club email address.
Speaking of useful updates, have you seen the changes they made to the camera controls?
Yeah, especially the stuff they're doing for accessibility. Like, the improvements for users who use camera control with their iPhone 16 are pretty impressive.
Absolutely. And you know what else I'm excited about? Wired Xbox controller support is finally here.
No more workarounds. It just works.
Music to my ears. Plus, they fixed those weird wireless mic issues with USB-C. It seems like Apple's really listening to how people actually use their devices, you know?
Definitely. They're bridging the gap between the flashy keynote promises and the real-world user experience.
Okay, but let's talk about the thing everyone wants to know about when it comes to updates.
Battery life.
You got it. What's the verdict on iOS 18.0.1?
So, based on what our tech guru found and what people are saying online, it seems like it actually improves battery life. But there's a catch.
Uh-oh, I don't like the sound of that.
Don't worry, it's not bad. It's just that there's a bit of an adjustment period. For the first week or two, it might seem like your battery is draining faster.
So like a little bit of update anxiety at first.
Exactly. But then, after some background processing and optimization, it finds its groove and actually ends up being a battery life win.
That's good to know. It's like giving your phone a little time to like settle in.
Exactly.
Okay, but we can't talk about updates without addressing the elephant in the room. Bugs. What kind of glitches are people experiencing?
Well, no software is bug-free, right?
Unfortunately, that's true.
But our source mentioned a few recurring issues that have been popping up.
Like what?
Things like phantom notification badges that just won't go away, the occasional app crash, and some music playback issues, mostly for people using CarPlay.
So the usual suspects.
Pretty much. But the good news is that Apple seems to be aware of these issues and is probably already working on fixes.
Fingers crossed.
Right. So the million-dollar question is, should you update to iOS 18.0.1 right now, or wait, what's the final verdict?
Give it to us straight. Should we hit that update button or tap the brakes? So it sounds like iOS 18.0.1 is a go.
Definitely.
But what about 18.1? Should we all be rushing to join the beta program?
Well, if you're okay with a few, let's call them adventures along the way, the current beta is surprisingly stable.
Adventurous, huh?
Just like the occasional unexpected behavior.
Right, right.
Especially on older devices, you might notice some battery life weirdness or a little performance lag here and there.
Got it. So maybe hold off on the beta unless you're really itching for those new features.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Speaking of new features, even with 18.0.1, some people might be wondering if it's worth the update, like what's actually changing besides the stuff we've already talked about.
Right.
Well, our resident tech guru dug up some under-the-radar updates that actually sound pretty cool.
Yeah, there are definitely some hidden gems in there.
What caught your eye?
Honestly, it's the little quality of life improvements that really stand out to me.
Like what? Give us an example.
Okay, so you know how you can share songs from Apple Music to like your Instagram story or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, now you can share directly to TikTok.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Right. It's a small thing, but it makes the whole experience so much smoother.
Totally. It's all about those little things that add up to a better user experience.
Exactly.
And speaking of smooth, did you notice the subtle change to the dynamic island animation?
You mean how that little green dot that shows your camera or mic is active, how it just kind of fades away now?
Yeah, it's so subtle, but it makes a huge difference.
So it's like they polished the edges of the interface.
Exactly. And they even tweaked the way calculator history
Oh,
expands.
yeah, I noticed that.
It used to slide in from the side, but now it pops up from the bottom like a little notification.
Right.
Again, not a huge deal, but it just feels more refined.
Those little details. Right.
Exactly. But they've also made some big improvements to iCloud.com.
Oh, yeah. iCloud.com got a major glow up. Dark mode. Finally.
I know, right?
And you can customize the backgrounds now.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Plus, they've improved the calendar integration. There are shared views for files, faster navigation in photos.
Notes even got an upgrade. You can pin important notes to the top of the list now.
It's like they're going all in on making iCloud.com a serious productivity tool.
Yeah, it's definitely a viable alternative to using your phone for a lot of things now.
Okay, but let's be real. All of this is pointless if the update drains your battery or turns your phone into a space heater. So how's the performance looking overall?
Okay, so based on what we're seeing, the overall performance is actually really good.
Yeah. iOS 18.0.1, after that initial adjustment period, seems to be a solid win for battery life.
That's great.
And in terms of overall performance, it's pretty smooth sailing for most people.
Amazing.
Now, 18.1 Beta 6 is a little bit of a mixed bag since it's still in beta, obviously.
Right.
Some people are reporting better battery life. Some people say it's worse. Performance is generally smoother, but you might still experience some lag or your phone getting a bit warm, especially if you have an older model.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it really depends on your individual device and how much you're willing to tolerate.
The beta life, right.
Exactly.
Speaking of performance, our source actually ran some benchmarks on both 18.0.1 and the 18.1 beta. Did anything stand out to you?
Yeah, actually, there was one interesting thing.
Oh.
iOS 18.0.1 actually scored slightly higher than the 18.1 Beta 6 in both single-core and multi-core performance.
Wait, really?
Yeah, but before anyone freaks out, the difference was incredibly small.
Like we're talking fractions of a second here.
Exactly.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Both versions performed extremely well overall.
So basically it's a tie.
Pretty much.
But it's still interesting to see that the official release is slightly outperforming the beta in terms of raw performance.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that changes as the beta progresses.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about new features, performance, bugs.
Battery life, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, the question is, are these updates worth the hassle?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is the ultimate tech dilemma. Update or, wait, what's the verdict?
Well, if you're on the fence about iOS 18.0.1, my advice is just go for it.
Just do it, huh?
Seriously. The security improvements alone are worth it. And from what we've seen, it sounds like Apple's really ironed out a lot of the initial bugs.
So smoother sailing overall.
Exactly. You're getting a more stable, more enjoyable experience.
Music to my ears.
Mhm.
But what about our listeners who are, let's say, more update enthusiastic? Should they be jumping on that iOS 18.1 beta bandwagon?
Well, the latest beta is looking pretty good. If you're the kind of person who loves having the newest features and you don't mind the occasional quirk.
Or adventure, as you called it earlier.
Exactly. Then yeah, go for it.
But maybe back up your phone first, just in case.
What was a good idea. But yeah, if you're more risk averse, there's no shame in waiting for the official 18.1 release.
Exactly. No judgment here. It's your phone, your choice.
Absolutely. Speaking of choices, remember how we mentioned earlier that Apple stopped signing iOS 18?
Oh, yeah, that's a big deal.
It really is. If you're still on iOS 18 for whatever reason, you're kind of stuck there.
No going back.
Nope. And no benefiting from those crucial security updates either. It really highlights just how important it is to stay up to date.
Even if you're not chasing every single update, that one's kind of a no-brainer.
For sure.
Well, there you have it, folks. We've explored the ins and outs of the latest iOS updates, from the big-ticket features to those under-the-radar tweaks.
We've talked battery life, bugs, performance.
The whole shebang. But at the end of the day, the decision of whether or not to update is up to you.
Weigh the pros and cons, think about your priorities, and make the choice that's right for you.
And hey, if you ever need help navigating the ever-changing world of tech, you know where to find us.
We'll be here, digging through the latest updates so you don't have to.
Until next time.